Quote of the day: dance like your socks have opinions. Laugh like the wind's got secrets. Dream like clouds are passing notes. And trust because God still parts seas. The Lord Himself goes before you and will be with you. He will never leave you nor forsake you. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged. Deuteronomy chapter 31, verse 8. That is your quote of the day. Now let's get right into the video. Now, NXT this week, it was actually pretty entertaining. It was kind of missing some of the big name stars, like the big name stars wrestling in action. But besides that, though, NXT was pretty entertaining. It was pretty fun. We got a lot of funny segments, entertaining matches, funny moments, and even surprise appearances. We got a lot of surprise appearances on this show. So this show overall, it was pretty entertaining. I don't have much complaints. So let's just get right into this review so it's not too long. So the first thing we got tonight was a Blake Monroe versus Khani Jordan match. It was a one-on-one match. And this match was set up because last week these two women had an altercation. They had a little bit of a back and forth in the ring. So this is where this match is coming from. This match wasn't too long, but it was pretty decent for what we got. It was pretty decent for what it was. We saw the more serious and aggressive side of Khani Jordan, which was pretty cool. But near the end of the match, though, at the very end of the match, Blake Monroe literally was chased out of the arena, and she had to run out of the arena because the muscle muffin, JG, Jordani Grace, she ended up coming out to get her get back, to get her revenge, She ended up coming out for Blake Monroe. She came to get her lick back, So Blake Monroe literally had to hightail it out of the arena. She was chased out of the arena in the middle of the rain, So due to Blake Monroe literally having to hightail out of the arena, Khani Jordan was able to pick up the win via countout, and that's how this match ended. After this, we got our second match of the night, and it was Hank and Tank versus Chase University. And this was a very fun match. It was very fast-paced, very fast action, not a step wasted, not a beat wasted. This was what it should have been. And this new Chase U group really surprised me. I think this is the first time we're seeing this new Chase U group in action, and they did their thing. They showed up and they actually carried their own, so I'm really impressed and I'm really happy with what we got. Anyhow, though, at the end of the match, Hank and Tank ended up hitting their finisher for the win. After the match ends, Dark State shows up and they absolutely obliterate and they destroy Hank and Tank and the Chase U group. They leave both of those tag teams laid out. And tonight, Dark State was on a mission just for vengeance, and they were just out for blood, It doesn't matter who you were, what your purpose was, what you wanted to do on the show, you had to get it past Dark State first, like they were up and they wanted all the smoke, just like the Street Profits, No matter what came their way, no matter what smoke it was, Dark State was just there for all of it, They were trying to catch all the fades, every fade. Dark State was like, what, fade? Say less. Smoke? Say less. Action? Dude, we're there. Like, it was really funny. Anyhow, though, after this, we got our third match of the night, and it was Lexus King versus Miles Bourne. And this was a pretty entertaining match. Both of these competitors absolutely showed up and showed out. They did their thing. And I still can't get over the fact how much Miles Bourne resembles Randy Orton, dude. Like, he's like a mini Randy Orton at this point. Like, dude, his demeanor, his character, like the way he walks, the way he wrestles, dude, it's just like, it's like a second Randy Orton. Like, the resemblance is so uncanny. But anyways, though, after a very hard-fought match, Miles Bourne is able to pick up the win using his finisher, a neckbreaker. I don't know the name of it. Maybe I do and I just don't remember, but he ended up just hitting his finisher, a neckbreaker, for the win. After this, we got our fourth match of the night, and it was Nia Jax versus Thea Hale. Nia Jax last week basically, left out an open challenge. She announced that, whoever wants to step up to her, Nia Jax is the most destructive force in all of WWE. Whoever wants, to step up to her, whoever wants to prove themselves, she'll be here next week. Just show up and, it's whatever. So basically, this match, it was funny. It was basically the very movable force, Thea Hale, versus the immovable force, Nia Jax. Thea Hale basically got ragdolled and thrown around for most of this matchup. But with that being said, though, Thea Hale did all she could, She fought and clawed tooth and nail, But in the very end of it all, Nia Jax was just too strong, too powerful, and Nia Jax ended up hitting the Annihilator on Thea Hale for the win. And after the match ends, while Nia Jax is drinking in the moment and she's celebrating, Lash Legend ends up coming out, She cuts a little promo just basically saying, Nia Jax isn't the most destructive force in all WWE. Lash Legend is, And Nia Jax is basically nothing compared to Lash Legend. And after all that is said and done, they end up having a big brawl, and Nia Jax and Lash Legend end up brawling throughout the whole entire night, throughout basically every backstage segment, every backstage interview segment. And they even end up making their way out into the main event and brawling out in the main event, It was really funny. After this, though, we got a backstage segment, and it was between JG, Jordani Grace, the Muscle Muffin, and the NXT GM, Ava. And this was basically just to serve the purpose of announcing that as soon as JG, Jordani Grace, the Muscle Muffin, is in full health, as soon as she recovers, as soon as she's medically cleared for in-ring action, she will get a chance and a shot at Blake Monroe. And basically, throughout the whole night, Jordani Grace had a neck brace on, so she's still injured. She's in no shape to compete. She's in no condition to be in the ring. So yeah, she's still injured. But Ava, the GM, basically said, as soon as you're medically cleared, let me know, and we're gonna set up the match. After this, though, we got an in-ring promo from the ruler, Oba Femi. And it was basically Oba Femi coming out. And Oba Femi basically says, I've held this NXT championship for over 200 days. I've beaten, stomped, and destroyed every competitor. The names may change, but the result always stays the same. I am still the ruler. So we're here again asking the same question. Who's next? What's next for Oba Femi? And out of nowhere, we get whoop that trick, whoop that trick, oh yeah, whoop that trick, I like it. We get whoop that trick, Trick Williams. He ends up coming out, and he tells Oba Femi, I'm the biggest star. I'm the man carrying two brands. I'm a self-made superstar. I made myself. And I'm going to be the man who knocks you off that mountain. I'm coming after you, Oba Femi. And then the young OG, Javon Evans, he interrupts and he basically laughs in Trick Williams' face. He says, Trick, you're goofy as hell, man. You're also annoying as hell, too. You're talking about coming after the NXT championship, but you can barely even defend the TNA championship. So that was pretty funny. The three men had a little bit of back and forth after this. And we get our first big surprise of the night. We get an appearance from the System, Moose. And Moose from TNA, he shows up and he basically comes out to remind Trick Williams that they're going to be facing each other for the TNA championship very soon. And Trick Williams should be, cautious. He should be weary. He should be looking out for Moose, And he also tells Oba Femi, as soon as I get my championship back from Trick Williams, I'm coming for you too. So don't be too comfortable. Don't get too comfortable, I'm coming after that NXT championship too, Oba Femi. I'm coming after you too, Oba. So that was basically that. And after these men, say what they have to say, the lights go out, it goes pitch black, and we see Dark State and Dark State show up, and they show up to ambush the four men. And I'm like, dude, who's the leader of this group? And was this his idea? Because if this was his idea, dude, kick him out of the group, because no group leader is going to put their team in danger like this. I'm like, dude, you see Oba Femi in the ring, you see Moose in the ring, you see Trick Williams in the ring, and you see Javon Evans in the ring, and you say, dude, let's go attack him. Dude, come on. I'm like, I don't know who the leader is, but whoever the leader is, they need some sort of consequences. They need to be kicked out, because this was treason, dude. No way you send out your whole team to face off against Oba Femi, Moose, Trick Williams, and Javon Evans. Dude, I'm like, come on. This was treason at the highest, But anyhow, though, rightfully so, Trick Williams, Moose, Oba Femi, the ruler, and the young OG Javon Evans, they defend themselves, they successfully defend themselves, and they fight back against Dark State, and they send Dark State packing. After this, we got a little backstage segment between Ren Sinclair and Charlie Dempsey. It's basically Ren Sinclair and Charlie Dempsey having some quality Ren and Dempsey time. They had some quality time. And this quality time between these two was wrongfully interrupted by, say his name and he'll appear. I believe in Joe Hendry. I believe in Joe Hendry. It was wrongfully interrupted by Joe Hendry, and Joe Hendry should be ashamed of himself. These two were having quality team time, and he comes out of nowhere, Charlie Dempsey is all down in the dumps because he lost Tavion Heights. He lost two members of the NQCC, Tavion Heights and Miles Bourne, so he's kind of, depressed. He's like, I trained these two too good. They beat me. I was too much of a good coach. I was too good at my job, So he's basically just sulking around, and he's kind of depressed, saying he lost two of his best, students. And Joe Hendry basically just shows up to lighten the mood, brighten up the moment, try to cheer up Charlie Dempsey. This was so unwelcome. This was very unwelcome. Charlie Dempsey wasn't having any of it. And this ended up leading to a match between Joe Hendry and Charlie Dempsey for next week. And the funny thing we got from this segment is that we ended up seeing Ren Sinclair wearing Joe Hendry attire, and that was pretty funny. That was pretty cool. I enjoyed that. Anyway, so after this, we got another match, and it was Stax Lorenzo versus Yokishi Inamura. And this match was happening because these two had a backstage altercation last week, and that's what led to this match, you know? Stax Lorenzo felt disrespected by Yokishi Inamura and this and that's what led to this match. And before the match even starts, Stax Lorenzo comes out and he completely blindsides Yokishi Inamura, you know? He ambushes him, and like that's how the match starts. And mid-match, we get an appearance from Anna Grace. She shows up and she interrupts the match. You know, Anna Grace comes out, she slaps Inamura and she causes a big distraction. And while the ref is distracted, Josh Briggs also makes his way out to the ring. He attacks Yokishi Inamura. He hits Yokishi with a big boot. And this leads to Stax Lorenzo taking advantage of the moment. And Stax Lorenzo is able to hit his finisher on Yokishi Inamura for the win. And Stax Lorenzo pins Yokishi Inamura. And this overall, before it got interrupted, was a really good match. You know, these men were completely trying to tear at each other. They were trying to just, you know, destroy each other. You know, the aggression was there. The animosity was there. The hatred was there. You know, this was a really good match before it got interrupted. Anyhow, after this, we got an in-ring promo from All Ego, Ethan Page. And Ethan Page basically comes out and he talks about how he beat Santino Marella last week, how he completely destroyed Santino Marella. And Ethan Page ends up calling himself the greatest Canadian and the greatest North American of all time. And he demands that the fans stand up, the NXT universe, the NXT audience, he demands that they stand up while he sings the Canadian national anthem. In mid-singing, thankfully, Ethan Page gets interrupted by Tavion Heights. Tavion Heights comes out and he says, Ethan Page sounded like a dying Canadian goose. And I could not have put it better myself, okay? Tavion Heights says that, you know, he just broke out of the group of NQCC. He's out here ready to make a name for himself. He's out here ready to stand on his own, you know? And he says he's a weapon in human form. So Tavion Heights is the weapon in human form. And that's basically what he calls himself. And he says to Ethan Page, I'm going to be the one to knock you off that Canadian maple leaf. And we get another surprise appearance, and this time it's from Chelsea Green in the Secret Harvest. And Chelsea Green basically makes her way out to glaze Ethan Page. You know, since both Chelsea Green and Ethan Page are Canadian, they kind of just, you know, glaze each other. And Chelsea Green says apparently she heard a rumor that Ethan Page went toe to toe with a moose. Ethan Page alone, solo dolo, fought off a Canadian moose, you know? And Chelsea Green says Ethan Page fought off a moose and the moose was the one apologizing after the fight. And I'm like, dude, we better see a video of this or it didn't happen. Like, come on. Talking about some Ethan Page fought off a moose all by himself and the moose was apologizing. I'm like, please, video, pictures, or it didn't happen. You know, I don't want to hear it. But anyhow, though, I found that pretty funny. After that, though, Chelsea Green makes her way down to the ring, you know, and she stands in the ring. She basically trash talks USA, you know, and she compliments Canada and talks about how much better Canada is, how much better the people are and stuff like that. And she looks Tavion Heights in the face, you know. She looks Tavion Heights in the eyes and she says, you know, I can see you getting a little bit irritated, but what are you going to do? You can't hit a woman. So what are you going to do now? You know, you're just going to stand here and listen to what I have to say. And then Tavion Heights ends up saying, you know what? You're right. And he socks Ethan Page right in the mouth, you know, and he's like, you know, Chelsea Green, I can't hit you, but I'm going to find a woman who can deal with you, you know. I'm going to find a woman to deal with you. And that's basically what she says to Chelsea Green. And that's how the segment ends. After this, though, we got a backstage interview segment that was interrupted by Nia Jax and Lash Legend fighting, you know. This brawl, like I said, continued out throughout the whole entire night. So there was an interview segment that got interrupted and that got crashed due to these two women, you know, brawling. And after the brawl happens, the NXT GM Ava has enough of these two women, you know, fighting against each other, like brawling against each other. Ava announces and makes it official that next week we're going to get a one-on-one match between Nia Jax and Lash Legend. And this match should be pretty good, two powerhouses, and I'm looking forward to it, you know. After this, we got another segment with Ava announcing two huge matches, you know. So in 2 weeks, we're going to get a match. In 2 weeks, it's going to be in Philadelphia, a match where it's going to be Trick Williams versus the young OG, Javon Evans. The winner of this match will get the opportunity to face the ruler, Oba Femi, for the NXT Championship. But before that, though, we're going to get an absolute banger, an absolute treat. Just next week, we're going to get a match where it's going to be the System, Moose. The young OG, Javon Evans, whoop that Trick, Trick Williams, and the ruler, Oba Femi, versus 4 members of the group known as Dark State. And this match is gonna be an absolute banger, you know. I'm looking forward to it. 4 complete stars, four entertaining men versus Darkseid. They're entertaining as well. Darkseid is entertaining as well. But I think we're all looking forward to the team of Moose, Javon Evans, Trick Williams, and Oba Femi. So yeah. Anyhow, though, I'm looking forward to next week for this match. After all that, we finally make our way to the main event. And the main event is a one-on-one match. It's Tatum Paxley versus Sol Ruca for the Women's North American Championship. And we had the calling ringside for Tatum Paxley and Zarya ringside for Sol Ruca. To no one's surprise, we got interference from the calling throughout this whole entire match. But it has to be said, Sol Ruca is very good in the ring. She's very entertaining in the ring. She's amazing in the ring, actually. Her moveset, her charisma, her high-flying moves, dude. She's amazing in the ring. She's always entertaining to watch, And Tatum Paxley as well. Tatum Paxley has such a cool, unique moveset, dude. These two women in this match were so entertaining. I enjoyed every second of this match. This match was so entertaining. But anyways, though, near the end of the match, Nia Jax and Lash Legend ended up making their way out to ringside. They ended up brawling out into ringside, and Nia Jax got speared through the barricade. Lash Legend completely left Nia Jax laid out. And due to this distraction, Sol Ruca was able to use the opportunity to hit the Soul Snatcher on Tatum Paxley for the win. And Sol Ruca retains, and she's still your North American Women's Champion. And that's how the show ends. That's how this week's episode of NXT ends. And that was that. Overall, though, I would rate this episode a solid 7 out of 10. I was thinking about rating a 6.5 out of 10, but, I'm going to give more credit. I'm going to give credit where it's due. I'm going to be more gracious. I'm going to be more, giving, I guess. I'm going to be more gracious, and I'm going to rate it a 7 out of 10. I'm going to give a little bit more props. This show overall, I'd rate it a 7 out of 10. It had a lot of funny moments, entertaining segments, and amazing matches, and cool appearances. I think the appearances really made this show for me. It was really cool seeing some different faces, some new faces, some shocking faces, But overall, though, like I said, I'll rate this episode a solid 7 out of 10. But I know next week's NXT episode is going to be an absolute banger. It's going to be even better. With a lot of the matches that got announced tonight, dude, I know next week is just going to slap. And I'm looking forward to next week, But anyways, though, that was this week's NXT and that was this week's show. Thank you for showing up. Thank you for hearing me out. And thank you for being here. Like, comment, and subscribe if you want to. Like, comment, and subscribe if you'd like to. And like, comment, and subscribe if you choose to. As always, it's been a pleasure. I'm out.